The clinking of solid silver on porcelain was the only sound at table 7, a sound overshadowed by the oppressive weight of a billionaire's impatience. Marcus Thorne, a man who built empires and crushed competitors before breakfast, couldn't manage a simple dinner order from his own son. The 8-year-old boy, Leo, just stared at his menu, his silence a shield. "For God's sake," Thorne's voice cut through the restaurant. "Just point. How hard is it?" He turned to the approaching waitress, Gwen, with a sneer. "Maybe you can help. Go on. Talk to my deaf son," he mocked. The restaurant froze, but Gwen's eyes didn't fill with fear. They filled with fire. Aurelia wasn't just a restaurant. It was a fortress of wealth. Located on the top floor of a Manhattan skyscraper, its floor-to-ceiling windows looked down on the city lights like scattered jewels. The patrons were the kind of people who didn't just own things, they owned companies that owned things. The air was thick with the scent of old money, truffle oil, and a quiet, ruthless ambition. Into this world walked Gwen Vance, night after night, her black uniform crisp, her apron starched, and her smile a carefully constructed piece of armor. At 26, Gwen was a phantom. She was trained to be invisible, to anticipate a need before it was spoken, to refill a water glass without a ripple. She was good at it. She needed to be. This job, with its humiliating uniform and exhausting hours, was the only thing keeping her and her father afloat. Tonight, the tension was higher than usual. The manager, Cynthia Davies, was vibrating with nervous energy. "Thorne is here, table 7. Do not," she stressed, her eyes narrowing at Gwen, "make any mistakes. He's particular." Gwen knew the name. Marcus Thorne. A tech mogul, a titan of industry, a man whose face was plastered on business magazines with headlines like "The Predator of Silicon Valley." He was known for his hostile takeovers and his complete lack of patience for human failing. Gwen smoothed her apron, took a deep breath, and grabbed her silver tray. Table 7 was in the best corner, a semi-private alcove overlooking the park. As she approached, she saw him. Marcus Thorne was exactly as advertised. Sharp suit, expensive watch, and a face that looked carved from granite. He was scrolling aggressively through his phone, a deep furrow between his brows. But he wasn't alone. Seated across from him, looking impossibly small in the large, plush chair, was a young boy. He couldn't have been more than 8 or 9, with his father's dark hair but a completely different energy. Where Marcus was a storm of contained rage, the boy was a pool of absolute stillness. He held a leather-bound drawing pad and a pencil, his eyes fixed on the blank page, a half-finished sketch of a dragon visible. He seemed utterly disconnected from the opulent room, lost in his own world. Gwen approached. "Good evening, Mr. Thorne. Gentlemen, my name is Gwen, and I will be your server. May I start you with some water, still or sparkling?" Marcus didn't look up. He waved a dismissive hand. "Sparkling, and we'll order now. I have a call in 30. He finally put his phone down with a sharp clack on the table, making the boy flinch. "And for the young gentleman?" Gwen asked, her voice soft, directed at the boy. Leo, she would later learn his name was Leo, didn't respond. He didn't even look up from his drawing pad. "He can't hear you," Marcus snapped, his voice dripping with annoyance. "He's deaf. I'll order for him. He'll have the pan-seared salmon, and a glass of apple juice." Gwen nodded, her professional smile locked in place, but her gaze lingered on Leo. The boy was now staring at his father, his eyes wide, and he shook his head in a tiny, almost imperceptible motion. He tapped his drawing pad. "What now?" Marcus sighed, rubbing his temples. "The salmon is fine, Leo. It's healthy." Leo shook his head again, more firmly this time. He picked up the menu, a massive, leather-bound tome, and his small hands struggled to open it. He pointed to something, his finger jabbing at the page. The... what? Marcus squinted. The gourmet cheeseburger. Absolutely not. We are not paying $90 for a hamburger, and you are not eating that junk. You'll have the salmon. Leo's face crumpled. He slammed the menu shut, the sound echoing in the alcove. He crossed his arms, his lower lip trembling. It was a silent tantrum, but the defiance was as loud as any scream. Marcus Thorne's face turned a dangerous shade of red. The lack of control, the public defiance from his own son, was a humiliation. He looked around, saw Gwen still standing there, waiting. Her presence seemed to ignite his frustration into a full-blown explosion. "What are you staring at?" he barked at her. "You think this is amusing? You think you can do better?" Gwen was frozen. Cynthia's warning, no mistakes, was screaming in her head. "Go on," Marcus sneered, his voice low and vicious. He gestured to his silent, furious son. "You're the service, so serve. Talk to my deaf son. Solve my problem, waitress." The world seemed to stop. The nearby tables, the clinking of glasses, the distant city, it all faded. It was just her, an arrogant, cruel man, and a small, misunderstood boy. Marcus leaned back, a smug, ugly smile on his face, expecting her to stammer, to apologize, to flee. He didn't know who he was talking to. Gwen felt the blood rush to her face, a hot wave of anger that threatened to break her professional mask. Cynthia was watching from across the room, her expression bordering on panic. Gwen could walk away, apologize, and let the kitchen send out the salmon. That was the smart move. That was the move that would keep her job. But then she looked at Leo. She saw the tears glistening in his eyes, the defiant jut of his chin, the way his small hands were balled into fists on the table. He wasn't a problem. He was a child, screaming to be heard in a language his own father refused to learn. Gwen knew that look. She had seen it in her own father's eyes 1,000 times when the world treated his silence as ignorance. She took a slow, deliberate breath, calming the tremor in her hands. She let her professional smile dissolve, replaced by something softer, something real. She held Marcus Thorne's gaze for one long, challenging second. "You want me to talk to him? Watch me." She turned her body, angling it away from Marcus, and knelt. She brought herself down to Leo's eye level. The boy's head snapped up, surprised. His eyes were dark, wary, and intelligent. Gwen ignored the billionaire sputtering behind her. She ignored the entire restaurant. She focused entirely on the small boy in the big chair. And then her hands moved. They moved with a grace and fluency that was like a second language, a dance of fingers and expression. It was perfect, unaccented American Sign Language. "Hello, my name is Gwen," she signed, tapping her chest and then drawing her fingers out in a wave. Leo's jaw dropped. His eyes, which had been clouded with tears and anger, suddenly widened into perfect circles of shock. He looked at his father, then back at Gwen, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Gwen smiled gently. "What's your name?" Leo's hands, which had been tight fists, slowly unfurled. He hesitated, as if afraid this was a trick. Then, with a sudden, joyful burst of motion, he signed back. "I'm Leo." Gwen's smile widened. "It's nice to meet you, Leo. I like your dragon drawing. Is he friendly?" Leo giggled, a real, silent giggle that shook his shoulders. He immediately launched into a flurry of signs, his hands moving fast with the pent-up energy of a boy who hadn't been truly listened to all night. "He's not friendly. He's a guardian. He protects the castle from bad guys. See? He has fire." He pointed to the scribbled flames coming from the dragon's mouth on his pad. "Very scary, I see." Gwen signed, her expression serious. "Now, I have a very important, secret question for you." Leo leaned in, his attention completely captured. That menu is boring, but I know the chef. What do you really want to eat? We can make anything. Leo's eyes lit up like supernovas. He thought for a second, then signed with great deliberation. A cheeseburger, but with extra cheese, and bacon, and no pickles, and fries. Lots of fries. An excellent choice, Gwen signed back. The burger of a true guardian. I will tell the chef to make it immediately. It will be our secret mission. Leo beamed. It was a full, radiant smile that transformed his face, chasing away all the shadows. Gwen stood up. The entire exchange had taken maybe 45 seconds. She turned to face Marcus Thorne. The billionaire's face was a mask of utter, profound shock. The blood had drained from his face, leaving him pale. His mouth was slightly open, his arrogant sneer completely gone, replaced by a look of dumbfounded disbelief. He had just watched a complete stranger have a more meaningful conversation with his son in under a minute than he'd likely had in a year. He hadn't been shut up by a witty comeback or a shouted insult. He had been silenced by a language he couldn't understand, a connection he couldn't forge, and a competence that utterly eclipsed his own. Gwen, back in waitress mode, picked up the large menu. The young gentleman will have the Aurelia burger, extra cheese, bacon, no pickles, and a side of frites, she said, her voice clear and calm in the silent alcove. And you, sir? Are you still set on the salmon? Marcus Thorne just stared at her, speechless. Gwen glided away from the table, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, but her face was a perfect mask of calm. She punched the order into the system, adding a special note to the kitchen. VIP kid, make it perfect. The head chef, a temperamental Frenchman, raised an eyebrow at the $90 burger order, but saw the look on Gwen's face and simply nodded. The moment she was out of the dining room and pushing through the swinging doors to the kitchen, Cynthia Davies was on her. "Vance!" Cynthia hissed, grabbing Gwen's arm. Her manicured nails dug in. "What in God's name did you think you were doing? I saw you. You were making gestures at that poor boy. You humiliated Mr. Thorne. I told you, no mistakes." Gwen wrenched her arm free, rubbing the spot. "I was taking his order, Cynthia. Mr. Thorne mocked me and told me to talk to his son. So I did. By flapping your hands around." Cynthia sneered. "You looked ridiculous. You're a waitress, Gwen, not a circus performer. You're here to take orders and be invisible. You are not here to insert yourself into a family's private medical issues." "It's not a medical issue. It's a language," Gwen retorted, her voice low and tight. "The boy is deaf. I am fluent in ASL. I communicated with him, calmed him down, and took his order. An order his father was trying to steamroll. I don't care what it is." Cynthia was almost vibrating with rage. "You overstepped. Massively. Thorne is our most important client tonight. If he complains, and he will complain, he always complains. It's your job, Gwen. Do you understand me? You are on incredibly thin ice." Before Gwen could respond, the service bell dinged. Leo's burger was up. It was a work of art, a tower of prime beef, melted Gruyere, and thick-cut bacon, surrounded by a mountain of perfectly golden fries. "I have to take this out," Gwen said, lifting the tray. "No," Cynthia said, blocking her. "I'll have someone else take it. You are to stay in the back. Go polish silverware. Now." "It's my table," Gwen said, her stubbornness flaring. "I took the order. I'm delivering it. That boy is waiting for me." She pushed past a spluttering Cynthia, balanced the heavy tray, and swung back out into the dining room. When she arrived at table 7, the scene was tense. Marcus was on his phone again, but he wasn't looking at it. He was just holding it, staring at his son. Leo was back to his drawing, but he kept glancing up toward the kitchen, his brow furrowed with worry. When he saw Gwen approaching with the tray, his face split into that same brilliant smile. She placed the enormous burger in front of him. "Careful, it's hot," she said, articulating the words clearly, and then signing. "The Guardian's feast is served. Eat well." Leo giggled and picked up the massive burger, which was almost as big as his head. He took a huge bite, cheese and sauce, immediately decorating his face, and gave Gwen a very enthusiastic thumbs up. Gwen turned to Marcus, whose own, still undecided salmon had been forgotten. He clicked his phone off and placed it on the table. "You," he said. His voice was no longer mocking or angry. It was quiet. Heavy. "Where did you learn to do that?" "I grew up with it, sir," Gwen said simply. "Grew up with it? Like a hobby?" Gwen felt the familiar sting of ignorance. "No, sir. Like a language. My father is deaf." This new piece of information landed on Marcus Thorne like a physical blow. He leaned back. Coda. A child of deaf adults. This wasn't a party trick she'd learned on YouTube. This was her native tongue. It explained the fluency, the ease, the instant connection that had bypassed him completely. My wife," Marcus started, then stopped. He cleared his throat, looking deeply uncomfortable. Leo's mother. She handled all of this. She was the one. She learned for him. I was busy. He looked away, out the window at the city that had made him a king but had left him a stranger at his own table. She passed away. 2 years ago. The confession hung in the air, raw and unexpected. Suddenly, the arrogance, the impatience, it wasn't just cruelty. It was the frantic, clumsy panic of a man drowning in a responsibility he had no idea how to handle. He was a man who could build a global network, but couldn't bridge the 3 feet of silence separating him from his own son. "I've hired tutors," he muttered, almost to himself. "The best. They all quit. Leo, he's withdrawn. He won't engage with them. He hasn't smiled like that in—" He trailed off, watching his son meticulously dip a fry into a puddle of ketchup. "He's not a project, Mr. Thorne," Gwen said, her voice quiet but firm. "He's not a problem to be solved or outsourced. He's a little boy who just lost his mum and whose dad won't talk to him." Marcus's head snapped up, the old fire returning to his eyes. "I try to talk to him." "No," Gwen said, holding his gaze. "You talk at him. You ordered him food he didn't want. You told him he was being difficult. You yelled at me for his silence. You're angry at his deafness and he can feel it. He's not withdrawing from the tutors, Mr. Thorne. He's withdrawing from you." No one had spoken to Marcus Thorne like that in 30 years. Not since he was a broke kid in a garage, dreaming of the company he would one day build. He was, for the second time that night, utterly speechless. The rest of the meal passed in a strange, subdued quiet. Marcus didn't take his phone call. He just sat and watched his son eat a $90 hamburger. He watched Gwen refill Leo's water, the way she'd catch the boy's eye and give him a small, signed more. And he'd nod. He watched the simple, effortless communication that he was paying a fortune for and failing to achieve. Gwen, for her part, maintained her professionalism. She cleared the plates, brought Marcus the salmon he eventually ordered, and barely touched, and offered dessert. Leo, his belly full, was now drawing furiously. He tore the page from his pad and held it out to Gwen. It was a new drawing. It was a stick figure of her, in her waitress uniform, holding a giant hamburger. Next to her was the dragon from before, and underneath, in wobbly 8-year-old handwriting, he had written, "Gwen, the Guardian's friend." Gwen's throat tightened. She took the drawing, her hand trembling slightly. "Thank you, Leo. I will keep this forever." She signed. Promise?" He signed back, his eyes serious. "Promise." She folded the paper carefully and put it in her apron pocket. When it was time for the check, Gwen brought the leather folder. Marcus took it, signing the bill without even looking at the total. He scribbled something on the receipt, then pulled out a thick, black business card. He slid the folder back to Gwen. "Wait," he commanded. She opened the folder. The bill had been for $350. On the tip line, Marcus Thorne had written, $5,000. Gwen gasped. It was more than 2 months' rent. It was her father's next round of specialist appointments, covered. But that wasn't all. Tucked under the clip was his business card. On the back he had written, "Thorne Tower. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. This is not a request." Gwen looked up, her mind racing. This was, what? A bribe? An apology? A summons? "Mr. Thorne, I can't accept this," she said, pushing the folder back. "Yes, you can," he said flatly. "It's a tip. For exceptional service." His eyes flickered with something, a hint of the old arrogance, or maybe just desperation. "And that," he tapped the business card, "is a job offer. Be there." He stood up, pulling his jacket straight. He nodded curtly to Gwen, then gently touched Leo's shoulder. "Time to go," he signed. It was a clumsy, poorly formed sign. The motion for go was correct, but he'd used the wrong hand shape. Leo, however, understood. He gathered his drawing pad and pencils, slid out of the booth, and for the first time, he slipped his small hand into his father's. As they walked away, Cynthia descended on the table like a vulture. Well, did he complain? What did he say? She spotted the bill folder, snatched it up, and saw the $5,000 tip. Her face went from red with anger to a pale, sickly green with jealousy. What did you do?" she whispered, her voice laced with suspicion. "What did you say to him?" "I served him his dinner," Gwen said, pocketing the business card. $5,000. Cynthia stared at the number, her mind clearly racing, filling in a story of manipulation, of schemes. "You think you're clever, don't you, Vance? You think you've got your hooks into him." "It was a tip, Cynthia." "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have tables to clean." Gwen walked away, leaving her manager stewing in a toxic brew of envy and suspicion. As she headed to the locker room, her shift finally over, she felt the folded-up drawing in her apron. The Guardian's friend. She also felt the sharp, heavy corner of Marcus Thorne's business card. This is not a request. She was trapped. If she didn't go, she was defying one of the most powerful men in the city. If she did go, she was walking straight into the lion's den. And worse, she'd be validating Cynthia's ugliest suspicions. She looked at the drawing, then at the card. One represented a lifeline for her family. The other represented a connection she hadn't felt in years. She had a feeling she was about to risk them both. The next morning, Gwen stood in the lobby of Thorne Tower. It was a cathedral of black marble, glass, and steel, designed to make anyone who entered feel small and insignificant. Men and women in sharp, impossibly expensive suits moved with a predatory silence. Gwen, in her only good blazer and a plain white blouse, felt like a sparrow that had accidentally flown into a shark tank. She was sent up to the 60th floor, the penthouse. The elevator doors opened not into a lobby, but directly into Marcus Thorne's office. The room was the size of her entire apartment building, with a single wall of glass offering a godlike view of the city he owned. Marcus was not at his desk. He was standing by the window, a mug of coffee in hand, already in a full suit. "You're punctual. I like that," he said, not turning around. "Coffee?" "No, thank you, Mr. Thorne." He finally turned to face her. In the harsh morning light, he looked exhausted. The power broker mask was off. He just looked like a tired, frustrated father. "Leo, he slept with that drawing you gave him," he said, his voice rough. "He asked for the burger lady this morning." "My name is Gwen," she said firmly. "Gwen," he repeated. "Right, Gwen." He gestured to a hard, uncomfortable-looking leather chair. "Sit." She remained standing. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, Miss Vance, I'm not good at this. The feelings, the talking. I build things. I solve problems with code and money. This," he gestured vaguely, "this is a different operating system. One I can't crack." He walked to his desk. "I am offering you a job. I will pay you 5 times what you make at that ridiculous restaurant. 10 times. Name your price." "A job as what?" Gwen asked, her arms crossed. I don't know, interpreter, companion, sign language tutor, whatever you want to call it. You'll move into the guest wing. You'll be on call 24/7. You travel with us. You'll facilitate communication. The word hung in the air, sterile and cold. Gwen felt a slow burn of anger, the same anger from the night before. "You want to hire me," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "To be a translation app. A living, breathing Google Translate for your son." "I want to hire you to help him," Marcus shot back, his frustration returning. "Isn't that what you do? Help?" "No, Mr. Thorne. That is not what I do," Gwen said, stepping forward. "What you're asking for is a patch, a quick fix. You're trying to throw money at a problem so you don't have to face it. The problem isn't that Leo is deaf. The problem is that you are his father." "How dare you?" "I dare," Gwen said, her voice rising. "Because I've lived this. You want to know where I grew up with it?" "I grew up in a tiny apartment in Queens, interpreting mortgage documents for my father when I was 9. I grew up fending off doctors who talked to me instead of him, like he was a piece of furniture. I grew up watching the world try to silence him, and I watched him fight back with more grace and intelligence than you could ever buy." She was shaking now, the words pouring out. "Your son doesn't need a paid companion to buffer him from the world. He needs his dad. He needs you to put down your phone, to look him in the eye, and to learn his language. And you're not offering that. You're offering to pay me to do it for you. You're outsourcing fatherhood." Marcus was stunned into silence. His face was pale. "So no, Mr. Thorne," Gwen said, her voice breaking slightly with emotion. "I will not be Leo's interpreter. I will not be your convenient excuse. I won't be paid to watch you ignore your son in 2 languages." She turned and marched toward the elevator, her heart hammering. She had just insulted a billionaire, thrown away a life-changing sum of money, and almost certainly torpedoed her own life. "Wait." His voice was small. She stopped, her hand on the call button, but didn't turn around. "You're right," he said. I'm an idiot. I don't know how. I don't know where to start." Gwen finally turned. The great Marcus Thorne looked defeated. "You start," she said, her voice softening just a fraction, "by showing up. You learn hello. You learn good morning. You learn I love you. You learn to sign his name. You start by trying. He's been waiting his whole life for you to try." A heavy silence filled the office. Marcus stared at his desk, at a silver-framed photo of a smiling woman and a younger, happier-looking Leo. I can't," he whispered. If I learn, if I let this in, it's admitting she's really gone. She was his bridge. I'm just You're his father," Gwen finished for him. "And he's on the other side of that bridge, waiting for you. Stop being a coward and go get him." She pressed the button. The elevator doors opened. "So that's it? You're just walking away?" he asked, a note of desperation in his voice. "I have to get to my shift, Mr. Thorne." "You're going back? To that restaurant? After that tip?" "I have a father to support, and I don't take handouts. I take a paycheck." She stepped into the elevator. As the door slid shut, the last thing she saw was the most powerful man in New York, standing alone in his glass tower, looking utterly and completely lost. Gwen arrived at Aurelia 15 minutes early for her shift, her mind still replaying the confrontation at Thorne Tower. She felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. She'd spoken her truth. She'd stood up for Leo and for her father. Whatever happened next, she'd done the right thing. She pushed through the staff entrance and headed to the locker room. She was stopped by Cynthia. "Gwen," the manager said. Her voice was cold, victorious. "You can stop right there. Don't bother changing." "What?" "My shift starts at 5. "No," Cynthia said, a smug little smile playing on her lips. "It doesn't. You're fired." The word hit Gwen like a punch to the gut. "Fired? For what? I've never had a single complaint." "Oh, we have a complaint now," Cynthia said, tapping a file folder. "Several, in fact. Inappropriate guest fraternization. Aggressive behavior. Soliciting gifts from clients." Mr. Thorne's $5,000 tip raised a lot of red flags. It was unprofessional. "That's not," Gwen sputtered. "He gave me that tip. I didn't solicit anything. And the business card?" "Ah, yes, the business card," Cynthia said, her eyes gleaming. "We know you went to see him this morning. Thorne Tower. Very ambitious. Did you think we wouldn't find out? You're a gold digger, Vance. You saw a vulnerable, grieving billionaire and his disabled son, and you tried to worm your way in. It's disgusting." "That is a lie." Gwen's voice shook with rage. "I went there because he summoned me. I turned down his job offer." "A likely story," Cynthia sneered. "Well, it doesn't matter. Aurelia has a reputation to maintain. We do not tolerate predatory behavior from our staff. Clean out your locker. You have 5 minutes. Security will escort you out." Gwen stood frozen. This was a nightmare. Cynthia had twisted the entire situation. The tip, the business card, the morning meeting. It all looked like a sordid, calculated scheme. And she had just told Marcus Thorne, the only person who could vouch for her, that she wanted nothing to do with him. She was completely, utterly alone. "You can't do this," Gwen whispered, the words tasting like ash. "That job. I need this job. My father. He's sick. His medical bills." "That's really not my problem," Cynthia said, her voice devoid of all empathy. "Maybe your new billionaire boyfriend can cover them." "Oh, wait. Looks like that plan didn't work out." How sad. Tears of hot, helpless fury welted in Gwen's eyes. She wouldn't give this woman the satisfaction of seeing her cry. She turned on her heel, marched into the locker room, and grabbed her bag. She didn't even clean out the locker. She just grabbed the one thing that mattered. The small, folded-up drawing of the dragon. 2 large security guards were waiting for her at the staff exit. They walked her out of the building like a common criminal. Gwen found herself on the busy sidewalk, the 5 o'clock rush-hour noise crashing around her. She was jobless. She was humiliated, and the check for her father's next round of treatments was due on Monday. She sank onto a nearby bench, the city's indifference a cold slap in the face. She had done the right thing, the noble thing, and it had cost her everything. Gwen's phone buzzed in her pocket. It was an unknown number. She ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. A relentless, frantic buzzing. Annoyed, she finally pulled it out and answered. "What?" she snapped. "Gwen?" Thank God. It was Marcus Thorne. He sounded breathless, panicked. "You have to come. Now. The penthouse. It's Leo." "Mr. Thorne, I don't work for you. And I don't work at the restaurant anymore, thanks to you. What? Fired? Who? Cynthia. I'll buy that place and burn it to the ground. Listen to me. His voice cracked. It's not... He's sick. He has a fever. The doctor's on his way. But he's hysterical. He's signing. And I don't know what he's saying. He keeps signing fire and man. And he's pointing. He's terrified. Please, I'm begging you. He won't let me near him. The image hit Gwen like a physical blow. A small, sick boy, terrified, trying to communicate a danger his own father couldn't understand. Her anger at Marcus, her humiliation from Cynthia. It all vanished, replaced by a fierce, protective urgency. I'm on my way, she said, already hailing a cab. 20 minutes later, she burst into the penthouse. The scene was chaos. Marcus was on the phone, pacing and yelling. A terrified-looking nanny was standing in the corner. And Leo was huddled by the glass wall, his drawing pad clutched to his chest. He was flushed with fever, tears streaming down his face, and his hands were moving in a frantic, almost unreadable flurry of signs. Man, bad man in the office, fire, fire. Hurt, Dad. He's delirious, Marcus said, hanging up the phone. The doctor's stuck in traffic. He keeps signing fire. I checked everything. There's no fire. Gwen walked slowly toward Leo, ignoring Marcus. She knelt, just as she had in the restaurant. Leo. She signed. It's me. Gwen, you're safe. Leo's head snapped up. Relief washed over his face, quickly replaced by the same frantic terror. No, Gwen. The man. The man in the office. He's bad. What man, Leo? Gwen signed, her voice calm, projecting an authority that silenced the room. Show me, Leo pointed, not at a fire, but at the door to Marcus's home office. He was in there, when Dad was in the shower, the man in the black suit. Not Dad's suit, a different suit. Marcus froze. What? My office? That's impossible. Security. What did he do, Leo? Gwen asked. Leo's signs became more precise. He had a box, a small box. He opened the wall. The painting. He opened the wall and put the box in. And Leo's face contorted in concentration. He mimicked a spraying motion. He sprayed water? No, he sprayed something on the wires. It smelled bad, like a bad lemon. Gwen translated for Marcus, her blood running cold. The safe, Marcus whispered, his face going white. It's behind the Monet. He ran to the office. Gwen followed, with Leo grabbing her hand and refusing to let go. Marcus threw open the office doors. The room smelled faintly of citrus. He wrenched the priceless painting aside, revealing a high-tech keypad and biometric scanner for his safe. He used a chemical, an accelerant, Marcus muttered. On the wiring, my God, he wasn't stealing anything. He was planting a bomb, a fire bomb. Timed to go off when the system recalibrates tonight. A bad man in a different suit, Gwen said, thinking aloud. Not your security. Marcus looked at Leo, who was hiding behind Gwen, pointing at a small framed photo on a side table. It was a picture of Marcus shaking hands with a man at a corporate event. The man had a slick smile and was wearing a dark, well-cut suit. That's Robert Stallard, Marcus said, his voice numb. My chief rival. We're in a hostile takeover bid. But how did Leo? He was here? Gwen signed to Leo. Leo shook his head. On TV. Dad yells at the TV when he sees him. He's the banned man. But the man in the office, he looked... Leo pointed to his own face. He looked like her. Leo ran out of the office and grabbed an iPad. His fingers flew across the screen, pulling up the Aurelia restaurant website. He tapped on the Our Team page. And there, smiling, a venomous, triumphant smile, was the manager. Cynthia Davies. The pieces slammed into place. Cynthia, fired for her negligence, as Marcus must have done, had allied with Stallard. She used her knowledge of Thorne's habits, his dinner reservations, his home. Perhaps she had a key or codes from a previous visit. She let Stallard's operative in to plant a device meant to destroy Marcus's research and possibly kill him and his son. And the only witness was an 8-year-old boy. The boy everyone ignored. The boy whose delirious warnings of fire and man were not fever dreams, but a literal, accurate report of a corporate assassination attempt. Marcus stared at his son, his expression unreadable. He had treated this child as a broken, silent burden, and that child, with his keen, observant eyes, the eyes of a boy who watches the world instead of just hearing it, had just saved his life. The penthouse swarmed with security, and later, federal agents. The device, a sophisticated incendiary device, just as Leo described, was disarmed. Cynthia Davies and Robert Stallard were arrested before they could even have their celebratory champagne. The media, of course, went into a frenzy. Through it all, Gwen stayed. She sat with Leo on the couch, the boy finally asleep, his head in her lap. She had fielded calls from the doctor. Leo's fever had broken, and had given her statement to the agents. Marcus had been in his office for an hour, on the phone with lawyers, the police, and his board. The predator of Silicon Valley was back, and he was dismantling his enemies with brutal, cold efficiency. Finally, the penthouse was quiet again. The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Marcus walked into the living room, his suit jacket gone, his tie loosened. He looked 10 years older. He stopped in front of the couch and just looked. He looked at Gwen, her blazer singed from where she'd gotten too close to the chemical-doused wires. He looked at his son, sleeping peacefully for the first time in what was probably years, his small hand still loosely clutching Gwen's. "He saved me," Marcus whispered. He saw everything, and I called him delirious. I told him to eat his salmon." His voice broke. A single tear cut a path down his cheek. The great Marcus Thorne, the man who crushed empires, was crying. "I have been," he said, his voice thick. "Such a fool. An arrogant, blind fool. I've been mourning a woman who left me, by ignoring the one part of her that stayed." Gwen finally looked up at him. "Yes," she said. "It wasn't an absolution. It was just a fact." "You have." He sat down in the chair opposite her. "The Gallaudet University," he said. Gwen blinked, confused. "What?" "Gallaudet University. In D.C., it's the university for the deaf and hard of hearing. My lawyers are efficient." He held up a file. Her file. Gwen Vance, graduated summa cum laude, Masters in Deaf Studies and Education, currently working as a waitress to pay off exorbitant medical bills for her father, Joseph Vance, a retired carpenter who lost his hearing in a construction accident. He tossed the file on the table. "You're not a waitress, you're an expert. You're a professional, and you were serving me truffles." "I do what I have to do for my family, Mr. Thorne," Gwen said, her voice tired. "Just like you." "No," he said. "Not like me. You succeeded. I failed. I failed him." He looked at Leo's sleeping face. "You said I needed to start. To learn." He looked at his own large, clumsy hands. "How? Show me, please." Gwen gently moved Leo's head onto a cushion and sat up. She was exhausted, but she saw something in his eyes. The arrogance was gone. All that was left was a desperate, grieving father who was finally ready to listen. "Okay," she said. "We start with the most important word." She held up her hand, her thumb touching her middle and pinky finger, her index and ring finger pointing up. "This is L," she said. He copied her. His hand was stiff. "This is E," she signed, bending her fingers in. And this is O. She showed him how to sign the 3 letters. L-E-O. He practiced it. Again and again. L-E-O, L-E-O. His brows furrowed in concentration. Now, she said, this... She brought her fist to her chest, her thumb extended, and swept it in a gentle arc. This is my. My. He copied her. My. And this... She formed a fist and moved it forward. This is son. It comes from the sign for father, like tipping a cap. He copied her. Son. He looked at her, then put the pieces together. He signed clumsily. My son. L-E-O. Good, Gwen said, a small smile touching her lips. Now for the hard part. She took his hand and helped him form the I. She showed him how to cross his arms over his chest for love, and she showed him the sign for you. He practiced it. I love you. Just then, Leo stirred. He blinked, his eyes adjusting to the morning light. He saw his father and tensed, the fear from the night before, returning. And then he saw what his father was doing. Marcus, his face a mask of desperate, clumsy sincerity, looked at his son. His hands were shaking. He signed, slowly, awfully, with the worst accent Gwen had ever seen. I love you, my son. L-E-O. Leo stared. He looked at Gwen, who nodded, tears in her eyes. He looked back at his father. And then, for the first time in 2 years, Leo spoke. It wasn't a sign. It was a sound. A rough, rusty, unused sound. From a boy who hadn't bothered to use his voice in a very, very long time. "Dad." Marcus Thorne crumpled. He didn't just cry. He sobbed. He fell to his knees and wrapped his arms around his son, burying his face in his hair. I'm here, Leo, he wept. I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Leo, held in his father's arms, looked over his dad's shoulder at Gwen. He smiled, and with one small hand, he signed, Good. You are learning. 6 months later, Gwen stood on a different stage. It wasn't the opulent, suffocating dining room of Aurelia. It was a bright, modern auditorium, buzzing with energy, camera flashes, and the beautiful, kinetic whisper of hundreds of hands in motion. The journey here had been its own negotiation. The morning after the arrest, a humbled, exhausted Marcus Thorne had not offered Gwen a job as a companion. He had simply asked, What do we do now? Gwen had laid out her terms, not as an employee, but as a partner in this new, fragile endeavor. First, her father, Joseph Vance, would have his medical needs covered, not as a handout, but as part of a comprehensive benefits package for her new role. Second, she would not be Leo's interpreter. She would be the family's tutor. Marcus would learn. He would put in the work every single day. Third, the $5,000 tip, which she had never cashed, and the millions Marcus was now desperate to throw at the problem, would be the seed money for something real. A way to systematically help other families bridge the exact gap that had almost cost him his son. The following months were a blur of work. Dinners at the Thorne penthouse were no longer tense, silent affairs. They were lessons. They were filled with the fumbling, frustrating, and often hilarious work of Marcus Thorne, a man who could command a boardroom of 20, failing to properly sign the word spaghetti. Leo, finding his voice and his power, became the teacher, correcting his father's handshapes with a giggle. Marcus, in turn, had insisted on meeting Joseph Vance. The two men, one a silent carpenter with calloused hands, the other a billionaire with the weight of the world on his shoulders, had sat in Joseph's small Queen's apartment. Marcus, with Gwen translating, had tried to apologize. Joseph had simply looked at him, then at Gwen, and signed, My daughter is a good woman. You are lucky she found you. Now, stop talking and learn. Now all that work had led to this day. The sign above the stage read, "The Leo Thorne Advocacy for Deaf Communication and Family Resources." Gwen, as the Foundation's executive director, looked out at the packed room. Politicians, tech leaders, advocates, and most importantly, hundreds of families and students from local deaf schools. In the front row, her father sat, healthy and proud, next to a beaming Leo. "We believe," Gwen said, her voice clear and strong, as a large screen and an ASL interpreter shared her words, "that a lack of communication is not a deficiency. It is a missed opportunity. It is a bridge not yet built. Our mission is simple: to provide the tools, the teachers, and the advocacy for every family to find its own language." She smiled. "And now it is my honor to introduce the man who made this all possible. Not just with his resources, but with his relentless, often clumsy, but absolutely dedicated practice. My boss, my most difficult student, and my very dear friend, Marcus Thorne." The applause was a thunderous mix of sound and motion. Marcus walked onto the stage. He was a different man. The sharp, predatory edges were gone, replaced by a deep-seated humility. He nodded to Gwen, his eyes shining with gratitude, and then he turned to the audience. He took a deep breath, and he signed. He did not speak. He let the interpreter voice his words for the hearing in the audience. "Hello. Thank you for coming." His hands moved, no longer stiff, but with a growing, heartfelt confidence. 6 months ago, I was a very stupid man. I was a rich man. But I was poor in here. He tapped his heart. I thought money was a language. I was fluent in spreadsheets and hostile takeovers, but I was illiterate in the language of my own son. He looked into the front row where Leo sat. Leo waved, grinning. "My son, Leo, is the bravest, smartest person I know." Marcus continued, his hands moving with emotion. "He saw danger when I saw inconvenience. He is my hero and my teacher." He glanced at Gwen. "Director Gwen Vance is the hardest teacher I have ever had." The audience, both hearing and deaf, laughed. She did more than save my son's life that night. He signed, his composure threatening to break. She saved mine. She did it by refusing to be intimidated, by refusing my ignorant offers, and by showing me what true strength was. She taught me that silence is not empty. It is a language. She taught me that deafness is not a weakness. It is a culture, a vibrant, beautiful community. He looked at Joseph in the front row, who nodded slowly. "And she taught me." Marcus's hands steadied, that it is never, ever too late to learn to say, "I love you." "This foundation is not my gift to you." He signed, his gaze sweeping the room. "It is your gift to me. It is my apology and my promise. My promise to my son. My promise to this community. We will listen. We will learn. We will build a world that is not afraid of silence. Thank you." As the silent applause exploded, Marcus stepped back, visibly moved. Leo couldn't be contained. He vaulted from his seat, ran up the steps, and launched himself into his father's arms. Marcus caught him, lifting him high. Gwen joined them, and Leo, now held securely by his dad, took the microphone from the podium, silencing the room. He looked at the crowd, then at Gwen, then at his dad. He didn't speak. He just signed, his movements clear and proud for everyone to see. My dad is a guardian now, too. Just like Gwen, he protects the castle. Gwen put her arms around them both. Joseph Vance walked up to the edge of the stage, and Marcus, still holding Leo, bent down. Joseph reached up and put a hand on his shoulder. The two fathers nodded, a universe of understanding passing between them. The cameras flashed, capturing the image. The waitress, the billionaire, the father, and the son. A family, not of blood, but of a shared, hard-won language. They had faced the arrogance and the silence, and they had found a voice, together. The story of Gwen, Marcus, and Leo isn't just about a shocking confrontation in a restaurant. It's about the power of communication and the arrogance that makes us blind. Marcus Thorne thought his son's deafness was the problem, but the real barrier was his own unwillingness to listen. Gwen, an underestimated waitress, didn't just shut him up with a clever comeback. She shut him up with competence, with compassion, and with a language he was too proud to learn. It took a crisis for Marcus to see his son, not as a broken part of his life, but as a hero. It just goes to show that the quietest person in the room is often the most observant. The real disability wasn't Leo's deafness. It was his father's ignorance. What did you think of Gwen's courage? Have you ever felt like you were the only one speaking a language no one else understood? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If this story of justice and connection touched your heart, please be sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to the channel for more dramatic stories where the underdog always finds their voice. Until next time, remember to listen, even to the silence.